From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. I took several days to decide whether or not to talk about the whole Oscar slap thing. And I decided to go ahead and do a short episode here because I want to highlight some of the best commentary that I've seen. Because it's been sparse. Most of the commentary I've seen has not been helpful, but some of it I admire very much. So I'm going to add my 2 cents and, again, highlight some of the best commentary. As you know, my credo is I try to say what's not being said, or at the very least, highlight what's not being heard from others. And so I took a few days to read a lot of commentary and do my own discernment here. 1, 2, 3, 4 items I want to address today. First, comedy itself and the ongoing debate on what comedy should or should not be canceled, so to speak. You know, that whole thing. The issue of race, as it has been widely discussed over this incident. Of course, I'm a white guy, so keep that in mind. Third, the cult of celebrity, which I don't think has gotten quite enough attention, and I want to talk about that a little bit, including the hypocrisy of Hollywood, which I think was on display pretty clearly. And then finally, and I think most importantly, the issue of toxic masculinity and what it means to be a man. I've got some thoughts on this, and I was hoping to find some good commentary out there about this very important issue, and I didn't find it really, with one exception, with one bright exception, and that is a great favorite of mine, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, just a wonderful commentator. He weighs in occasionally when there's a big story out there, and I find him to be just a brilliant guy. He cuts right to the chase. He gets right to it. So I'm going to recommend you read his commentary, and I'm going to add my own. All right. By way of just a short premise, when something like this happens that involves celebrities especially, or, you know, it doesn't even have to be a celebrity, somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse who becomes a celebrity, I find much more interesting what these incidents reveal about us in our reaction. And that's where I want to try to keep the focus today. So much of the conversation centers on the individual, their personal motivations, and they become a hero to some and a villain to others, and just, you know, name it. You can name any story. I think OJ was sort of the best example in my lifetime that kind of triggered a whole era of this kind of media coverage and public response. The story itself about him and the case, well, that becomes voyeuristic, and that's kind of like, these horrible true crime programs, which personally, I don't understand at all. I don't understand true crime and why people find it fascinating. Okay, it's for prurient interests, sure. But I just found it much more interesting how the American public started talking about race and the issues of domestic violence. You know, then it becomes a conversation that is worthwhile, that can actually do some good. Just getting into all the details of individuals and their lives and their particular psychological problems, or, you know, that's just tabloid stuff. And I have no respect for that at all, just none. Okay, so enough of the intro here. Let me just cover a couple of things. Very quickly, comedy itself. I've always been an advocate for free speech, especially when it comes to comedy. I leave room for criticism because I think there are lots of times when a comedian can punch down so to speak. And we all know what I'm talking about here. And so, yeah, I can be critical of comedians. I don't think they should be punched or slapped. I don't think they should be banned or so-called canceled. But they're certainly open to criticism when their free speech borders on, or even, not even borders, crosses the line into sexism, misogyny, racism. Yeah, call them out. Absolutely. So I'm not a purist when it comes to free speech for comedians. You have some responsibility to be a decent human being. Everything doesn't have to be an over-the-top roast. So I'm not a purist in that regard. I am a great admirer of comedy, especially of the stand-up art form. It's quite a skill. I've expressed my admiration many times on this program for what a good stand-up can do. Good stand-up comedy can obviously make you laugh. That's the most important thing. But it also can enlighten. It can be provocative, make you think. It can skewer those who deserve it if you're punching up. It can be much more honest than other forms of communication, whether it be journalism or straight commentary. It can offer a release, the kinds of things that we're afraid to say in the audience. And then a comic says it, and there's a great sort of cathartic release to that. So there are many wonderful things you can say about it. But then again, it can also sometimes miss the point. It can punch down. It can go for the easy laugh. It can minimize pain. And that's what Chris Rock was accused of doing. Punching down. Minimizing the suffering of Jada Pinkett Smith, the celebrity in question. Now, again, I'm not going to get into this supposed feud between the Smiths and Chris Rock over the years. Again, that gets into personality stuff. It gets into individual stuff, and then it's just pointless and prurient, and we don't need to know about this stuff. It's not important. That's when it becomes silly and tabloid. So my bottom line on the appropriateness of Chris Rock's joke, taken with his wider lens, is I just, compared to everything out there, I really didn't find anything wrong with it at all. It was just a dumb joke. I didn't really understand it at first because G.I. Jane, the movie, it kind of rang a bell. Yeah, I think I've heard of this. And given some time to think about it, I would have remembered maybe that, maybe that was about 20 years ago. Demi Moore shaved her head, and I guess that's the reference for the joke. But in the moment, I didn't really understand it. I thought, is there a G.I. Joe movie out there? Or Jane, G.I. Jane. Did Jada Pinkett Smith star in a remake of G.I. Jane? And now there's going to be a second. I just honestly didn't know what he was talking about. So it was such a harmless joke, in my opinion. And a quick little side note here. I looked up alopecia. Because there again, I think I'd heard of it, but I didn't know she had it. I didn't even know who she was, really. I mean, the two of them make headlines all the time. You can't help but sort of pick it up in your periphery. So I really knew nothing about them. I didn't know anything about her. And so it turns out she has alopecia. And much has been written and said about alopecia. And all of it wrong. Because they keep saying, well, she suffers from this immune deficiency disorder, and it causes hair loss. That's really not the right way to put it. I just did a quick little study on it. I read a few articles on alopecia, and I couldn't find any other symptoms. You don't suffer from alopecia, you just have it. Sure, you can suffer some bad feelings and depression and sadness because your hair's falling out. Okay, I'll give you that. But they made it sound like she had this horrible disease. And it was implied that hair loss was just one of many symptoms. That's the way they made it sound. Oh, she's suffering from this terrible disease. I heard other people call it a disability. It's not a disability. Your hair falls out. That's the only symptom. You don't get a rash. You don't have pain. You don't have other complications. Alopecia just means your hair's falling out. That's all it is. There's nothing else. So, I'm sorry your hair's falling out. But Jesus Christ, compared to the whole book of other diseases you could have, compared to the other problems in the world, oh my God. Come on. Get over yourself. Shave your head. Wear a wig. If I had alopecia, I would not be looking for anybody's sympathy. I just shaved my damn head. And did you see the Oscars? Did you see her? She's smoking. She looks fantastic. She's rocking that bald look. She looks absolutely great. So I don't know. I don't know why she just didn't stand up and smile and take a bow. If she was pissed off at Chris Rock, she should have, in the moment, outshined him. She should have stood up. She was right in the front row. Stood up, faced the audience, big smile, take a big bow. The ovation she would have gotten, it would have made Chris Rock look so small. She would have won. Everything's over at that point. So anyway, the whole alopecia thing, unless you can correct me on this, I don't know. This is the one item here in my commentary that I'm probably getting wrong, because I've literally heard no single person share this thought. So I'm probably wrong. But from what I read, alopecia just means you're losing your hair. Yeah, and it's because of this immune deficiency, but it doesn't cause anything else. There are no other symptoms. There's no pain. There's no rash. I mean, it'd be different if she had cancer and she was bald because of chemo treatments and Chris Rock makes a snarky joke. Yeah, then I might be on her side, but all right. Okay, so there's the comedy conversation. Chris Rock didn't do anything. He told a relatively bad joke with a reference to a 20-year-old movie. Oh, my God. Compared to the whole rest of the world, the problems. All right. Okay, so there's that. Number 2. I'm going to spend very little time on this because I am going to defer to others on the whole racial component. And back to the alopecia thing. Women and their hair, black women and their hair, they have to pass freaking laws about it. And it's been pointed out that Chris Rock actually produced a documentary about the issue, so he should have known better. Good hair versus bad hair. That I'm going to leave for other commentators. I certainly understand from what I've read, and I myself, I didn't see the Chris Rock documentary, or did I? I did see a documentary about it. I don't think it was his. So I know very little, but here's how much I know. Maybe 3 or 4 magazine articles and 1 documentary I saw. That's how much I know about the black hair issue. And I have read about the debate on the laws. One of them just recently passed about what is appropriate or inappropriate in the workplace and how dare white folks legislate black women's hair. All right, that's everything I know about it. From what I do know, I am 100% squarely in the corner of black women and their right to do whatever they want on their heads. Now, the other thing I'm going to leave to others, but it does touch on something I'm going to talk about, and that is the relationship of black men and black women. I'm not the guy to talk about that. And the issues in black culture regarding their relationships and how black men need to be protectors and defenders. That's not for me to talk about. As you and I have talked about many times in the past, as a white guy, it's not my job, and that's putting it way lightly. It's more like, how dare I comment on black culture and how black folks should behave, especially towards each other, especially in husband and wife relationships. My God, I'm not going to say a word about that. This is a case among many where white people just shut the fuck up Just listen. Try to learn something. So I'm going to follow my own advice on this aspect of the story. And the only last thing I'll say about it is, for a white person to think they have an opinion while at the same time ignoring the great issues for which we are responsible. Institutional racism. The fact that there's still no serious conversation about reparations. We as white folks have plenty to think about, plenty to do, without getting into becoming an overnight expert in black culture. Let's take an honest look and do a little critical analysis on white culture and white history and how it has impacted black folks for 400 years. I mean, come on. So, just a little friendly reminder to my white friends and family out there. Shut up. Unless you're going to talk about reparations, unless you're going to talk about the responsibility of European Americans to right the wrongs, the sin, the evil of 400 years, unless you're going to have that conversation, you shut the f*** up. All right. Okay. I mentioned that I saw some good commentary, and the best one I saw, the very best one I saw, was from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm such a great admirer of this guy. He's a public intellectual. When issues come up, when big things happen in the news, his commentary is, to my mind, always just spot on. I think he's a brilliant guy. So I'm going to recommend you find Kareem's thoughts on this. The headline I saw was, Will Smith did a bad thing. But what I liked about Kareem's essay, and I'll link it so you can find it easily, but, you know, you can find things easily, right? You're smart. Among many things that he said really well, one of his points of emphasis was that an incident like this gives ammunition to those who say, those racists who say, oh, black on black crime, black men are naturally violent, it's just in their nature. So Kareem's making the point that obviously that kind of thinking is racist and wrong in every possible way. But he criticizes Will Smith for giving those racists ammunition. They can point to this and say, see, we were right. So very important that Kareem said that, and almost nobody else said it. I'm sure you could find one or two out there. You know, everything's been said. But I'm talking about the high-profile stuff that's making it into the collective consciousness, right? Because that's what most interests me with incidents like this. What makes it into the larger conversation that everybody's hearing? And this point, from what I read, it did not make it into the larger, it didn't take a central role in the larger conversation, which I think it should. So good for Kareem. All right, so that's everything I'm going to say about race. All right, next. Not enough has been said about the whole cult of celebrity. As I said earlier, if and when I comment on these things, I want to make it about the larger issues. To get all hung up on the individuals and their individual motives, that just plays into tabloid thinking. And especially when it involves celebrities, as it almost always does. And even in a case like I mentioned Kyle Rittenhouse earlier, he becomes a celebrity almost overnight. So then it all kind of falls into the same category. Well, we're talking about famous people. So we want to know all about them as individuals. And we want to know and we want to dig back into every clip we can find and any comments they may have made 10, 20 years ago that may be relevant to this and get deep into their psyches. That's all just tabloid BS. I don't care at all about celebrities and their private lives. I could care less. This cult of celebrity that we have in this country, where everybody, the public generally, just gets so swept up in the worship of these folks. The best and really kind of only article I've seen on this comes from the World Socialist website. The cult of celebrity has reached an advanced and severely damaging stage in America, having flourished dramatically in recent decades. As the actual conditions of life have drastically worsened for tens of millions, the need to live vicariously through others more fortunate to lead a fantasy life has grown exponentially. As we noted more than 2 decades ago, excessive celebrity must be linked to inequality, indeed becomes a rationale for inequality and reinforces it, ideologically and materially. The heaping of fame and wealth upon a single individual or a handful of individuals is only possible and meaningful if the vast majority have no access to those rewards. This is an important statement. This is an excellent analysis. And to me, this is a much more important, much larger issue that has been exposed through this incident, this one sort of shocking moment. And because of this cult of celebrity and the entitlement that it creates in this very small class of folks, now you have issues around the incident that were mind-boggling to me. The first thing, because I was watching, I saw this live, I was watching. I was amazed that he wasn't escorted out of the room, Will Smith. I thought, well this is the very least you can do. Or at least at the next commercial break, when we come back, he's not there. Take him out during the commercial break. You don't have to escort him out on live television. Okay, fine. You don't want to make it worse than it is. But how is he not escorted out of the building after what he did? That was insane to me. Well, because of privilege, because of the cult of celebrity, because of the entitlement. If a stagehand had walked on stage, or an usher, or a seat filler, right? If anybody else outside of this little club had walked on stage and assaulted the performer, come on, what do you think? So it was crazy to me. Cult of celebrity. It's from both ends of the spectrum here. It impacts the public at large, how we see these folks, and how we respond to them. And as the quote I just referenced, it's only possible because most people don't have it, right? The only way you can have that kind of wealth and power is because other people don't. Inequity is inherent. It's essential to this relationship. So yeah, anybody outside of that club who had done the same thing would have been wrestled to the ground, handcuffed, and escorted out. And they couldn't even do it during the commercial. Just go up to him quietly, say, "I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, we're going to have you leave." And what's he going to say? No? So that was crazy. And then the next crazy thing that happened, and my jaw was on the floor. They're announcing the nominees for Best Actor. I'm just praying to God, please don't let it be Will Smith. Please, please, please. They call his name. I fully expected everyone to just sit on their hands and let him walk up in silence, like Chris Christopherson in A Star is Born. Just sit there. But no. Applause. Standing ovation. Not 10 minutes after he did what he did. What is wrong with these people? You know, I fall for it every year. I confess. The Oscars, they talk about their great art and their great love, and I fall for it year after year. I think, okay, yeah, I don't really see that many movies. They're way too violent. I don't care for the violence in movies. They're often just dumb. They're derivative. But every year there's a few good ones. And the nominees this year, I saw a few of them. I saw Coda. I saw The Tragedy of Macbeth. What else did I see? I saw a few of them. And, they're good movies. Okay, good. I like art. I like artists. I respect when they do a good job. And so I get caught up a little bit every year at the Oscars. Like, yeah, artists doing art. What's more important, you know? But in that moment, all that just was blown away. When I saw the whole room stand up and applaud this guy. That was crazy to me. If I was in that room, I just would have sat, sitting on my hands. And every single one of them should have done the same thing. And I don't understand why they didn't, except that they're just all, I don't know, they're just hypocrites. They're entitled because they're members of the club too. Yeah, I thought that was an awful moment. Just awful. So, yeah, the whole cult of celebrity thing, can we just make an effort to move beyond that? It's really a stain on American culture. And then here, I saved the best to last. I saved what I think is the most important thing. I probably shouldn't have done that, but I did. And that's the issue of toxic masculinity. A man stands up to protect his wife. Not only that, uses violence. What a man. Now, setting aside the racial component, we've already talked about that. I'm not going to get into the black culture and the particular dynamics there. Let me keep this generally men, women, and everybody in between. I saw lots of comments in my feed. Many of them, actually most of them, from women, praising Will Smith. It's like, yeah, that's what a man needs to do. Stand up for his wife, protect his wife, protect his woman. And let's go back to Kareem, because this was the most important part of his essay I mentioned earlier. He says very clearly that this was damaging to men, to women, to everyone. That what some people are calling, I don't know, chivalry, protecting your woman's honor, is actually, in Kareem's view, and I share this view, it's misogynistic, it's sexist. It doesn't help women, it hurts women. It upholds the patriarchy. It upholds gender expectations. As I said earlier, Jada could have and should have just stood up and taken a bow. She could have handled that so easily. Stole Chris Rock's thunder, make him look small. For a joke you didn't like. Oh, it could have been so easy. But no, Will Smith, big bad Will Smith, twice the size of Chris Rock, who's just a little guy, has to go up and slap the shit out of him. Oh, look at me, I'm a man. And then completely, we haven't really talked about it at all here, but then completely loses shit and yell expletives. Drop the F-bomb twice, not once, but twice, on international television. 1 billion people are watching this thing across the globe. He lost it. Now there again, I'm not going to get into individual stuff. I've had anger issues in my life. I've lost it once or twice. I never hit anybody. But I know what that feels like. So I'm not going to talk about Will Smith, the individual. Whatever he did for his own reasons. And if he needs help, if he needs to get on the couch a little bit, okay. Do what you need to do. That's not my concern. My concern is the larger message sent, especially by the reaction of the public at large. And a lot of people were praising him for standing up for his woman. Well, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? I've really had it with this, and you and I are going to have to talk at greater length in the future. I got to get my thoughts together, but bottom line, there are 100 ways. There are 1,000 ways to be a man. And as anybody with, do 5 minutes of reading and you'll understand that it's a spectrum. There are all sorts of men. To require this kind of machismo, this willingness to be tough and to be violent as a prerequisite for even calling yourself a man is just beyond ridiculous and so damaging. Yes, of course, if a man and a woman are married, the man should protect the woman and honor the woman, of course. Just like the woman should protect and honor the man. They should protect and honor each other. To assign gender roles to this is just crazy. And the fact that Will Smith is bigger than Chris Rock and he can beat him up, That's not a quality in men to admire. Hell, Jada Pinkett Smith could beat up Chris Rock. I could beat up Chris Rock, and that's saying something. He's just a little guy. And by the way, Serena Williams, who was there in the room, could beat the hell out of Will Smith. So, what does it matter if you're a man or a woman or somebody in between? And just a quick note, if this is landing on deaf ears at all, again, do 5 minutes of reading. Understand that not only gender represents a wide spectrum, so does sex, so does the biology, the hormones, the chromosomes. I'm not going to pretend to understand this well enough to explain it, but I understand it well enough to know that it's true. So to assign these qualities in order to justify your narrow definition of men and masculinity is just wrong and harmful to all of us. I mean, there are 100 what ifs. What if Jada Pinkett Smith had smacked Chris Rock? What if Chris Rock had smacked Jada Pinkett Smith? What if Will Smith had smacked Elliot Page, another man? You see how ridiculous this all becomes? When you have a wider definition, a more inclusive definition of what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman. These narrow definitions are harmful, and especially when they uphold the patriarchy and when they condone violence. Bill Maher, on his recent show, I'm often critical of Bill Maher, he did a whole long bit about Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine and what a great role model he is and how tough he is and how women like him because he's macho. And he used that example to justify why we have to discard the very notion of toxic masculinity, which is a very real thing, and why we have to embrace this very narrow definition of men. Not only narrow, but harmful definition. There are 1,000 different ways to be a man. There are 1,000 different ways to be a woman. And if you're tough and big and macho and short-tempered, well, okay, I don't know. You got that way because I don't know how you got that way. Biology, psychology, the environment you were raised in, the society you were raised in, everybody has their own story. I'm not talking about any individuals. I'm talking about the way all of us together collectively think about these issues and treat each other. So for me, personally, this is my bottom line. And in all of my reading over the last several days, I haven't really seen anybody touch on this. There's no one definition for what it means to be a good man or a good woman. Let's try to be good people. Let's try to be kind and understanding to each other. If you need some help, God bless you, go get it. I hope you can find help if you need it. We all do, in one area or another. As I said, I've had anger issues in my lifetime. I've said inappropriate things. I've lost my temper. Absolutely I have. Again, I never hit anybody. Thank goodness. But we have so far to go. We have such a long way to go in the realm of gender norms, gender expectations, especially as they uphold and maintain sexism, misogyny, transphobia, and the patriarchy generally. So I'm not blaming Will Smith or Chris Rock or Jada Pinkett Smith for all of this, for all the world's problems. I am pointing to the several days now worth of reaction that have been very enlightening to me. Some excellent commentary, but few and far between, and some really awful stuff. All right. Okay, so there it is. That's my say on this. I hope you're well. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.